Hello everybody and welcome to the stream. I realize I'm once again late. I apologize. I was trying to plan my run today so that I wouldn't get wet. And so I waited a bit, which cost me some time. And then it worked for about half the run. And then it started pissing down and I got completely wet. So my plan completely failed. I mean, I got so wet. If I had a bicycle, if I had a push bike, it would have been a triathlon. Hello, Mode 7. How are you doing? I hope you're having a good day. Earlier show today, obviously. Earlier as in Monday, not Wednesday. I'm trying to get ahead of this vaccine situation, which I guess... if I don't have any side effects, I might as well do another show on Wednesday if I can get that done. But we'll see. We'll see after tomorrow. Nice to see that you're doing well. Okay, let's check this all out. Hello, 1, 2, 3. This is a test. Don't you start now with the allergies. Not a fan of that. Damn it! Check this all out. Hello, 1, 2, 3. Good all day. This is a test. Gonna have to blow my nose here in a sec. Give me a second. Well, I can mute myself. So you don't have to hear my elephant impression. Jesus Christ, it was good all day. Literally, now I start the podcast. It is starting. Wonder if I should take some stuff. Probably, I'll bet at you. Give me a second. I'll be right back. Just have to go to the other room. Right, drugged up. Let's start this shebang. As usual, alerts and everything's off. Not interacting with the chat as much as usual as I'm recording this podcast. You know the drill. Let's get this started. If I don't die from like hay fever. You're listening to The Private Citizen, the podcast that's defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 81. For Monday, the 9th of August, 2021, let's talk about Apple. Hello everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Fab, I'm your host. As usual, I'm coming to you live from the city of Düsseldorf in Germany, this time on a Monday. Nice to have you along. On a Monday because, well, normally I release the show on Wednesday, but you know, I have my second vaccine shot scheduled for tomorrow, and the first one knocked me out for 3 days. So, and I did the same thing there. I wisely recorded an episode on Monday and put it out on Monday, which saved me from dropping an episode dropping a recording and missing an episode that week. So I thought, let's do this again. So here we are. We have to talk about Apple because everybody wants me to talk about Apple, apparently. There's been a big, I think you can call it a shitstorm like last week with some news of new features in iOS that Apple wants to roll out, and everybody, and by everybody I mean my IT security privacy bubble has been completely up in arms. But it has hit the mainstream press, and I think it's a topic interested, that everybody will be interested in, especially if you're listening to the show. You certainly will be. I don't think it will come. If you have been listening to me talking about what I think about the world on a podcast for a while, then this won't come as a surprise to you. But I guess, it's new, so we definitely have to talk about this. And I'm going to roll in some other, not only the thing that caused the shitstorm, but some other news that, some other stuff that Apple's done recently. And I'm going to try to wrap it all together and form a big picture. Before we get into that, I wanted to just say something. Another thing that people have been talking to me or have been asking me quite a lot is if I am going to cover the Pegasus malware story on the show. And of course I will. Sorry, I need some Earl Grey here. My hay fever is plaguing me. People were kind of like, I'm surprised you haven't talked about this, and I'm like, why? I mean, certainly NSO Group hasn't paid me to not report on it. I mean, that would be something. That would be a new income. No, I would never do something like this, of course. No, I've been preparing it. It's just it's not an easy topic. There's some research involved, and the reporting on it hasn't been as in-depth as I would like. So there's some digging involved. But be assured, I'm on the story as soon as I'm ready, as I always do this. As soon as I'm ready, I'm going to do an episode on this. And Mode 7 live in Twitch chat is obviously, as I always do this these days, I record the show live on Twitch. Mode 7 says tea, Earl Grey hot. It is indeed tea. Earl Grey hot. So let's get into what Apple has done last week. So basically, Apple has caused a bit of a stir, a bit of a shitstorm, mostly among like ITsec and privacy-oriented people. With two features they want to roll out in iOS 15, which is going to hit later this year, that have to do with porn. In one case, presumably legal nude images, and in the other case, illegal material like child pornography. Now, anybody who's been paying attention and anybody who's been listening to this show can't be surprised by this. I've talked before on the EU's regulatory steps to basically try to enable or even enforce, make platform providers of internet platforms search their platforms for child pornography. I mean, this is something I talked about in the upload filter discussion, where we're talking about algorithms scanning what you upload to sites because of copyright related issues. But this is obviously technology. The same technology can be used for something like this. And I don't think currently they use upload filters. Basically, they do, they search images on file sharing sites and stuff like that, on backup sites for, this kind of material. And the EU has started legalizing this in Directive 2020-0259, which is about, it's basically an exception to the privacy rules that the EU is very, 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 very hot on privacy. But of course, to do something like this, they need exceptions. And I've discussed this, an iteration of this in episode 76, where the German government basically wants to, or announced plans that they want to legislate operating system makers like Apple and Microsoft to do this stuff in their operating systems. And so what we're seeing here from Apple is basically this. One of the features is the one I'm talking about first. It's basically an implementation of this, an implementation of stuff that we've seen before, that we know lawmakers want. And so the first of the new features that Apple has announced is a system by which they will scan all photos uploaded into iCloud for known child abuse material. And if they detect such material, they will presumably report this to local and or federal authorities, depending on where you reside and whatever. This is done by a system that is not new. There's a database that the federal government in the US has, and there's probably there's a similar database in Germany that the BKA, the federal police, has. That is basically hashes of known child porn and young adult underage porn, and so they have hashes of all these images, and they are just gonna compare. Like if you upload a picture to iCloud, they're gonna generate a hash for that picture, and then they compare that to the blacklist. Mode 7 says we should call these anti-features. Yeah, from a user perspective, there certainly are anti-features, right? Nobody wants this. Well, there are some users who might be talked into by the let's call it what it is, government propaganda that child porn is bad and we need to fight this, and they then think this is a good idea. Still, it's an anti-feature because it's not something that does anything for them, right? Presumably it does nothing on their machine, because you would think that people like that don't have child porn in their iCloud. But yeah, so that is not that surprising. And while it was attacked by lots of privacy conscious people and interest groups and stuff, the thing that actually caused the shitstorm in the IT security community is the second feature, which is Apple said that they will scan photos that are included in iMessage chats locally on each phone. And of course, iMessage is end-to-end encrypted. So basically, they're scanning encrypted messages. Technically, they don't, because they scan it on the device before it's encrypted. Which is, we talked about this before. This is how do you defeat end-to-end encryption if you have that access. And so they will scan these pictures for nudity. And if the phone has parental protection features enabled, then the user, who's presumably underage, will have all images that include nudity automatically blurred. And they have to click on them and request that they can see them. At which point they will get a message that says something like, it's okay not to look at this image. This is, to me, I don't have kids. I've said this often, I don't have kids. Because I'm not a parent, I don't particularly understand parenting. I can only remember how I dealt with stuff like that in my childhood. And if my phone, we didn't have phones back then, right? This is old man telling stories from the war. Back in the day, we only had 386s. But, if I had a phone and my phone would have said, do you want to see this nudity? And then it said, it's okay not to see it. That is like the dumbest, what child? You can't possibly be that protected growing up that you go, yeah, all right. It's okay not to. I don't want to see this picture of a naked girl. Come on, right? We're presumably talking teenagers here, right? Back in the day, for me, this kind of stuff wasn't that easy. Like back in the day, we would look through mail order catalogs at the lingerie pages, and that was basically our porn. I remember. Yeah, that is so patronizing, and I can't believe that would ever work. But okay, that's what they're doing. Now, if the child is under 13 and they click, yes, I want to see the nudity, then the parents will get alerted by the operating system. And Apple's saying that they detect nudity by an algorithm that runs locally on the phone. They don't say much about this, but like I think there's a white paper on the algorithm, which I haven't gone that deep into it because the technical implementation details aren't really interesting to me, to be honest. I think it's a bad idea. I think that's a given here. Yeah, so apparently I use some machine learning algorithms that can analyze and find nudity. And Apple is promising that there will never be like a false positive in this. Also in the child porn iCloud detection, sure. They're never false positives with algorithms. We've never seen this in our life, and Apple is flawless. Apple never creates software that has problems. I've never seen this before. Yeah, and getting real porn was not easy, says Mod7. Yeah, it was, back in the day, it wasn't as easy. It was all much more seedy. I still remember, like, when I was actually 18, I found it incredibly, like, I don't know, almost disgusting to go. And, you had like the video rental store, and they had a special section with like these weird curtains. I don't know if it's the same in every country, but in Germany, with these weird curtains, and you had to actually go in there. And like these were like horrible. Like if you go today, if you go on Pornhub and you think these descriptions or these, basically the cover of that video is horrible. You should have seen like porn in the fucking like 90s. I mean, these were like just the most like either disgusting or just like cheesy, like even the covers and the names, beaded curtains. No, they were like kind of like strips. They were like the strip of like rubber, I think. These rubber strip, they were weird. The whole thing was weird. I remember when I was like about, I don't know, 19 or something. We had friends over actually to watch porn, and we rented like we rented some. I think it was actually some cartoon porn, like was one of them, and like we rented the most shoddy like looking porn just to laugh about it. The other I think was gay porn, and it was so bad. Like we just watched it to like make fun of to drink and make fun of the dialogues. It was so bad. Anyway, of course these days all on the internet. Now again, I don't have kids. I'm not a specialist on this topic, but I would think, I don't know, just some common sense here, right? If your kid is under 18 and you want to protect them from nudity, how about not buying them a phone? You don't have to have a phone when you're like 10. I didn't have a phone when I was 10. Right? We didn't. It is not like, oh my God, I can't reach my child. How will I know if they are like, just ask somebody who did their parenting in the 80s, right? Or whatever. Like, you don't fucking, I mean, I understand like the social pressure and, but like, I mean, maybe it was just like my parents. I mean, I certainly didn't have everything. Like, I was an only child. My parents, they weren't exactly rich, but I grew up in very fortunate circumstances, right? Compared to other people I know, where their parents had more children, or they just, or they didn't have enough money, or like not as much money as my parents, who were both working, or both, and like. But even I certainly didn't get everything, right? Everybody had a Game Boy, and I didn't get a Game Boy for ages. I didn't get a Nintendo console, like a N64 or whatever, for ages. I remember I actually had to like save money on that, and like, I didn't get everything everybody had. Like, what is it with this social pressure where like every kid needs, like, you're making these problems for yourself. Right? How about you only buy your kid a phone when you are ready to sit down with them and explain to them the things that they will see on this phone. How about that? Just an idea. Instead of just trojaning everybody's fucking phones. Because, I mean, this is what everybody is upset about. iMessage is a end-to-end encryption service. And, of course, it's nothing new to anybody who's been into IT security and privacy that, hey, you can do this, right? You can basically, people call it backdoor, but it's not really a backdoor. You can circumvent end-to-end encryption if you have access to the content before it is encrypted. And if you are the maker of the app or the operating system maker, then you have that access. And that's not a secret, right? That's nothing new. Now, the point is where I think people have a point. I mean, so end-to-end encryption protects you. So I send something from my phone, let's say, to your phone. It protects everything in between that, right? Even the company servers, whatever. But there's always an assumption, and I always said this on this podcast, on other podcasts, on the episode I did on how to circumvent end-to-end encryption, which, God, what episode was that? I'm gonna have to look this up. Give me a second here. Go to privatecitizen.press. There's a handy episode list in the top. There's also a contact button. If you don't agree with anything I say, you can click on that. A link, rather. But if you go to the episode list, what are we looking at? Okay, sorry. My Windows is obviously telling me that wasn't found, but I found the episode anyway. Episode 32, How to Hack End-to-End Encryption, where I basically explain how the police did it. But, the assumption with end-to-end encryption is that you trust the operating system and you trust the app creator. And that has always been the case. And so the good point is, yes, Apple is kind of violating users' trust, right? Because if you use iMessage, if you use the end-to-end encryption, then you have to trust Apple. That's like what I was saying, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted and it's state-of-the-art end-to-end encryption, but you obviously have to trust Facebook, right? And this is Apple basically saying, for a good cause, we will ignore this. For the operating system maker, because they have access to this data, there's an assumption, right? If you make an operating system and you make an end-to-end encrypted app, then even though you could get access to that content, there's an assumption that anything the user puts on in that app, the user wants to be encrypted and wants nobody to see, including the operating system maker. And Apple is just ignoring that assumption, and that is the problem. And so they're breaking people's trust. And as Edward Snowden points out, by the way, if you go to privatecitizen.press, there's links to all of this. I'm quoting stuff and articles and stuff. It's all in the show notes. In this case, for episode 81. So privatecitizen.press/episode/81. You find everything. So as Edward Snowden points out, Apple is essentially establishing a surveillance infrastructure here that might in the future be used by, intelligence services, repressive governments, whatever, to look for incriminating materials. Because, we've certainly seen this in the past with IT technology, information technology, with IT, or generally with technology, but especially with, computers and digital stuff. They introduce a feature like this, and it's always child porn first. Or, in this case, nudity and kids, whatever. Will somebody think of the children, right? And then you have the infrastructure in place, and then somebody comes along and says, hey, why don't we also look for, drug smugglers or whatever? And there's certainly ways governments can compel, and intelligence services can compel a company like Apple to do something like this. And if that company wants to have a legitimate defense against that, the only way is to say we can't implement such a feature. We can't break this end-to-end encryption. We can't go around it. And now they basically told the world, we can and we will. And that is a problem. And that is also, a dangerous precedent, as, some people like Matthew Green from Johns Hopkins, I think. He's a relatively famous cryptographer. Where's he at? Yeah, he's at Johns Hopkins. Anyway, as Matthew Green points out, this is a precedent, right? He says, regardless of what Apple's long-term plans are, they've sent a very clear signal. In their very influential opinion, it is safe to build systems that scan users' phones for prohibited content. That's the message they're sending to governments, competing services, China, you. And then he, of course, asks, where will it end, right? They start with child porn, like, what's it doing next, right? And right, because in this case, in iMessage case, of course, they're looking at content shared with others, but they're doing the same thing basically on iMessage, which is like your private backups. And they basically, what they're doing is they are implementing an official version of the best way we know to hack end-to-end encryption, and they're making it less useful, or actually, some people who are privacy purists would say they're making it useless, right? Because they are basically now saying, hey, we have end-to-end encryption, but we also have this way around it. And it's different if like some police operation hacks an encrypted phone system, whatever, or if like the creator of the system says, look, we have a way around it. We have basically a backdoor. Mode 7 says, I hate to sound like a broken record because I know I say this a lot. So in Twitch chat, but this is a good reason not to trust non-free software. Now, I've actually not gone into this aspect of it at all, because I don't think this is an issue about proprietary or non-free software. Because let's take Signal, which is open source, has the same problem, because it runs on an operating system controlled by Apple. And now you could say, okay, what we need is an open source operating system, right? I mean, this is like what the purists always say. We need everything open. We need free software, Stallman. We need free software BIOS. We need everything free software. That is kind of missing the point, though, right? This is not about code. This is not about the freedoms the user has with the code. This is about what makers of software think is okay, right? And you could let's say let's take a very unrealistic scenario here. Let's say Ubuntu phone would have taken off and had millions of users, and it's like an open source phone platform, right? If Mark Shuttleworth is for some reason convinced that doing this kind of thing is good, they will implement it. You're in the same problem, in the same situation. Okay, now the argument is, yes, you could fork, but like, a phone operating system, that it's an ecosystem. It's not about the software. The reason, not completely about the software, or just the end user software, right? The reason we don't have completely open source phone stacks is because, you need to integrate with the hardware and whatever. So even if one vendor, which is an unrealistic scenario because it has never happened for this very reason, even if Ubuntu phone would have taken off, they would be the only one, right? They'd be the ones get their drivers, and they get hardware. They get their specific hardware made in China, and somehow got the maker of the hardware to interoperate with them, right? It wouldn't be a given that you have a Debian phone that you could then, you don't like Ubuntu. They're doing weird things, scanning your image library for stuff. Let's go Debian phone. That's unrealistic. That's not how it works. I mean, we don't even have Ubuntu phone in the first place. The only place, and I grant you it's a big example, and it's right in this case, where this ever worked was the PC, the IBM PC, because it was open from the start, and you just can put an operating system on there, and the hardware is interoperable, and you're ready to go. But there hasn't been a system in computing like that has been popular, that has gotten the main market share. So I personally think this argument goes. It's not completely wrong. It is technically correct. It just ignores realities that are out there that can't be changed. And yes, you're pointing out purism, whatever, it's getting somewhere, but to be honest, it's getting nowhere, right? 99% of people use phone operating systems. I don't want to say proprietary, because a lot of it is Android and it's, technically open source, but, they're in this vendor lock-in situation, right? Not even a vendor. It's hard to explain, right? It's not, okay, this is Apple, right? But if Google was doing this, they're controlling an even bigger share of the phone market. It's not like you can, normal user can easily go, I don't like this, I'm going to put an Android ROM on my phone, right? They would tie this in. Google, if Google did this, they would, like they do everything right now, they would tie it into the Google Play services, and they would go, if you want to use the Google Play services, you have to opt into this, us checking your images. And as you know, probably from people who've, if you see with the whole Huawei thing, if you can't use Google Play services, you're fucking dead in the market. It's not specifically vendor lock-in, and it's technically open source, but I don't know. I don't have a specific term for it, but I think you understand what I mean. It is hard to explain and discuss, and that is also one reason it's hard to avoid SysMod 7. Yeah, it's like it's a gray area, right? It's not clear cut. It's not like, hey, we got open source, we're happy, right? Because like Android, as people like I used to do podcasts and talk to people like Bradley Kuhn from the Software Freedom Conservancy. Like they will point out that Android isn't completely open source, right? It's not completely open source down to the hardware, and this is what causes all these problems. But I actually think open source is not the solution to this, because this is a problem of politicians. I don't think this is about Apple. I'm gonna get to that later. I'm kind of derailing this a bit, but I think Mode 7 is, I like this feedback, right? I like this live feedback. I think this is a valid point. And I think you're not the only one. When people listen to this on the podcast, there will be people who have the same questions and the same arguments. So I think it's worth discussing. But I think this isn't about Apple. This is Apple doing something they think is good, right? That policy makers, lawmakers want, that people are convinced is a good thing to do, and that is the actual problem. Because in the real world isn't perfect, right? So we will never have completely an open source stack somewhere. We will always be at the mercy of somebody, right? It doesn't have to be a company, right? Open source, like in this case, we're at the mercy of Apple, and we have to trust Apple. But if I use Signal, I have to trust some key developers there. And what am I going to do if they say, like, if Moxie Marlinspike goes, yeah, checking for child porn is a good idea, we should like implement the same thing. Like, what am I going to do? Right? You say you use a different messenger app. Yeah, right, because I can just switch messenger. It's hard enough to get people to use Signal from like WhatsApp, There's always this kind of like, it's kind of like soft login, right? Messengers have this a lot. And you're always at the mercy of somebody. It's like Mastodon, right? Mastodon was the Fediverse. I'm going to do an episode on this. It's been on the to-do list for ages. But like, it's been touted as, it's like decentral. It's great. It's like there's no censorship, right? And then there was a point where the Mastodon developers said, hey, I don't know, what was that? Gab? Some social network. I think Alex Jones was involved. Like, I'm not saying anybody should like interoperate with that platform, right? But they were kind of like a Mastodon fork, and they were interoperable with the Fediverse. And then the Mastodon people were like, nah, we are progressive. Like, I don't know, we don't like the political direction this network is taking, so we're cutting them off. Like, we're killing interoperability there. And you will always have that. Yes, you can use, then say, it's open source. You can use another Fediverse client. Yeah, but like I've set up this server, right? I've done all this work. And now I'm just going to switch to another client. Like, you always have these problems. Like, there's stickiness involved there. And I think because of that, attacking it with such means that saying, okay, we need open source, we need distributed things. Yes, you're solving certain problems by going open source. You're solving certain problems by having distributed services, but they're not a silver bullet, right? And the problem in this case, which I'm going to try to explain now, isn't Apple. Just let me finish with this whole first point about the way they're circumventing like end-to-end encryption, and also like the hashing algorithm they use for the iCloud thing, right? It's like Apple's promising that it's gonna have no false positives, whatever, because false positives would be really horrible, right? You have like an innocent photo that is just like a photo of, I don't know, a cat in your iCloud. You upload to your iCloud, and the Apple algorithm goes, that's child porn. And you get like reported to the fucking FBI. And the next thing you know is like, Mr. Scherschel, open the door. This is Special Agent fucking John McMulder or whatever. Right? You don't want that. But like, that algorithm is going to be reverse engineered. And it's going to be manipulated. I mean, you can do like these, what they're called, I'm going to click on this link and figure, adversarial attacks, right? You can do these adversarial attacks. A famous example is like, you put a sticker that doesn't look like anything. It's just like a weird square, it's like weird squares, weird colors. You put that on a stop sign, right? And that makes a Tesla not recognize the stop sign and blow through the stop sign and potentially kill the driver or whatever. Like, you can do that. There's been lots of attacks that have been documented like this. So you can do this. These are attacks you can do against, like, machine learning, reinforced, like heuristic virus scanners, for example, right? You can make them generate false positives, make them not recognize actual viruses, make them DDoS them, whatever. So we know that somebody will come up with something to do this, right? To do this to this algorithm. And, next thing you know is some innocent photo that you can take a photo that you can manipulate, which, just looks like it's like a meme or whatever. It looks totally innocent. It's a photo of a cute cat. But like, if the Apple algorithm hashes it, it's going to come up with like a child porn hash, right? So you can send that photo to somebody, and they're like, oh, this is cute, I'm going to save this to my iCloud. Bam, next thing you know, you get a phone call from the FBI. I don't know, does the FBI actually call you, or do they always turn up in person? I have this image that they never call you, that you just turn up, like, this Crown Vic rolls up, and like two guys in very federal looking suits, like, come up, traipsing up your front lawn. I guess in Germany it would be the BKA immediately, and they'll cuff you, and yeah. Or, Apple's saying they have a they have a manual review process. So probably it's not going to go to the FBI, but probably your family pictures will end up getting reviewed by some minimum wage intern in Croatia, which is what Apple calls a manual review process, because that's where they outsource that kind of stuff. Which, isn't as dramatic, but it's something you don't want. This is a private backup, presumably. You want these images to be private. People don't want that. Do we actually have to mention? I think we have to, but let's keep this short. I mean, it should be understood to anybody who listens to the show that this system is going completely attacking the wrong target, right? This is not gonna impact anybody who makes their living producing child pornography, right? They have that fucking database already, right? You don't think that they pay off people in companies that do this kind of stuff, or get or even in the government, in the police? You don't think they have somebody on the payroll who wants them off this stuff and gives them the fucking list? I mean, come on. I'm just currently watching Miami Vice because I discovered it's on Amazon Prime, and I haven't seen this in ages. But watch something like this. That's a crime drama show, right? But it's something like this is based on reality, right? There's fucking people on the payroll everywhere, right? You have a cop who makes I don't know, a few $100s a week. And then in that case, they're drug smugglers, and they go okay, do you want to earn $10,000? Right? These child porn people presumably have a lot of money as well, because producing that stuff is risky. So I'm presuming they're making a lot of money with it. You don't think they have that database and can get around that, or at least know what's on the list. Right, and obviously it should be obvious that this is targeting the wrong people. You're targeting a platform that is used by everyday people to back up their family photos, right? You're not targeting the means that people who produce, sell, or consume child porn use to share such content. We know that, right? It's obvious. Anybody who's ever looked into this kind of crime and talked to people who investigate this kind of stuff, they have their own internet forums, right? They use their own sharing. They don't use fucking iMessage. It's just, let me put this in my iCloud and then I'm going to send you the link. Yeah, right. They're not that dumb. Okay, some of them probably are dumb, but in general, you're going after the wrong people here. And I think there's a picture forming. If you connect this to other stuff Apple has done, you will see a pattern forming here pretty soon. For example, there's a feature that you might have noticed was released in iOS 14.5. So if you use an iOS device, if you use an app for the first time, there's this message that pops up where the app asks you for your consent to share or to basically track you across other apps on the device or websites in the browser, whatever. And everybody clicks, no, I don't want that. Because, why would you want that? Now, Apple says this is a great innovation, right? To me, I saw that and I was like, why didn't Apple implement this the moment the GDPR came into effect? Because this seems to me that's what every fucking website does, right? Because it's mandated in the GDPR and in this California privacy law and whatever. So they're just doing what they're legally required to do, that's what I think. Now, Apple PR claims as a huge success from Apple Insider, which is basically an unpaid mouthpiece for Apple PR, as far as I can understand. They're saying during the company's Q3 2021 earnings call, Cook, Apple CEO Tim Cook was asked how the change to identify for advertisers tracking tag handling was developing and how it was influencing the trajectory of advertising within Apple services. So you can tell, it's an analyst call, right? This is a softball question. This was just asked so that Tim Cook can fire off a prepared statement. So Cook says, we've been getting quite a bit of customer reaction, positive reaction, to being able to make the decision on whether to be tracked or not. Cook said, adding that the feature seems to be going very well from a user point of view. Now, you might think, okay, this is great. And most of the reporting on this was, hey, Apple app tracking thing, total success, right? But then you go to Ars Technica, and you figure out that this is a story about Facebook and how Facebook, which makes its money off tracking you across websites and apps, is fine. So this is from another earnings call. Facebook's original public predictions about app tracking transparency's effect were apocalyptic. But even though app tracking transparency took effect during Facebook's most recent quarter, Q2 of 2021, the company still posted huge ad revenue growth. Facebook's revenue, which is largely driven by the kinds of advertising that Apple's iOS change undermines, grew 56% year over year in Q2, beating investor expectations. Well, it's also probably because last year was horrible because of the scare-demic, but yeah. The company had 1.9 billion daily active users and 2.9 billion monthly active users. It earned $10.12 of revenue per user on average. Data on user opt-in rates for tracking has varied quite a bit. Some firms put the figure at just 4%, but others placed opt-in rates as high as around 30%. The rate likely depends on the app in question. In any case, users who opt in are definitely not the majority. Most users are declining to be tracked when prompted. And each user who does is worth a lot less money to Facebook, which makes much of its money leveraging users' data to charge advertisers money to micro-target users and others with similar attributes. But, they're still making huge revenue, so it doesn't seem to have affected them that badly. Now, here's what I think. Let's ask this question. What if Apple didn't implement this because they have your privacy at heart? Maybe they did this one reason, of course, is I think because of the privacy laws in the EU. But what if there's also a motivation for Apple, which is, notoriously bad at, getting traction for its online services, and has never managed to become a big player in the ad business. What if they want to gain an advantage over their competitors? So this is from the same Ars Technica story, which actually, at the end of this paragraph, says this very thing. Today, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, is dedicating much of his time to describing his vision for the metaverse, which he has identified as the new direction for the company. He has described his vision as putting a mixed reality layer on our lives through which people can interact and socialize with one another virtually in new ways while crossing geographic barriers. But Apple executives have also outlined a somewhat similar long-term vision, albeit with a very different approach. And here comes the kicker. By forcing Facebook to play by different ad targeting rules, Apple has strengthened its position against the social media company in any coming battle over a future mixed reality computing landscape. What if a big reason for Apple to implement this kind of app, thing wasn't only complying with EU rules, but it's a competitive advantage for them because they're not as good at tracking people and giving them advertising. That is not their core business because they're shit at it. So they can hurt Facebook and to some degree Microsoft, who's getting into this stuff more, and other companies like that, by, restricting this kind of stuff. So could it be that they're doing that because of that? That they're just using, we are a privacy-centric company as a cover to basically change the playing field and tilt it in their favor. That's what I think. But there's also another change that they recently announced that I think makes this even clearer. So this other change was announced a few months ago, and it didn't actually get that much traction. It was certainly covered in advertising marketing circles because they're worried about this. But I think, they should be worried about it because it fucks with their business. But I think from a privacy standpoint, it's hilarious. So Apple says it's a privacy feature. Keep that in mind. And it sounds good on the face of it, right? They are fighting tracking pixels in emails. Now, I know I'm going to do I've promised this, I'm going to do an email privacy episode in the future. But in case you're not aware of this, and if you listen to this podcast, you probably are, but, might get new listeners. So I want to explain this really quickly. So most emails that are sent, especially emails from companies, almost all of them are HTML emails. And if you have your email client set up to read HTML emails, which pretty much everybody has, and not to block images from external sources, which few people do, because then those HTML emails are in many cases not usable, then you are being tracked by a very simple way. There's a way how the sender of the email will basically put a 1 pixel big image, transparent image, into the email. You don't see that image, right? But the moment you open the email, all the images in the email are loaded, including this tracking pixel. And it's a tracking pixel because your email client will go to the server of the person under the control of the person who sent the email or of a tracking company. They might pay somebody to do this, and will go there and fetch that image. And HTTP connections work in such a way that your client goes, "Hey, I'm Fab. My IP address is 10.2.6.81. I want this image." And so the server knows that you opened the email, and they know your IP address, and they can presumably use that to track you, especially if they do this with lots of emails. They know what kind of emails you get, and they can then target you for advertising. Now, Apple's fighting that, which, on the face of it, is a good thing. Who is this? Forbes. As Forbes describes this, as follows. I can't talk. I need more Earl Grey. I'm running out of Earl Grey. Stat, I need more Earl Grey. Somebody run to the replicator for me. At its WWDC this month, on its Apple Developer Conference, Apple announced a new feature aimed at stopping email senders from gathering critical pieces of data about email recipients. Specifically, the Apple Mail privacy protection, set to roll out this fall with iOS 15. Okay, so this isn't live yet. I should have said that before. Allows users to block email senders like publishers, retailers, and more from detecting when they open an email, among other things. The change has many email senders and ad servers in panic. For years, and that's servers as in people, not the servers, not the actual servers. For years, email open rates have been the de facto standard for measuring campaign success and user engagement, and for monitoring. This is Forbes. Wait, I need my Forbes voice. For years, email open rates have been the de facto standard for measuring campaign success and user engagements, and for monetizing emails through advertising. Not only are open rates a primary KPI, they don't explain KPIs. KPI is a key, what's that again? It's a fucking marketing term. Management term. Key performance indicators. Not only are open rates a primary KPI, but most email advertising vendors operate on a CPM or cost per impression model. Explain that, that's nice. Which means brands pay publishers to get paid get paid based on how many recipients see the ad. If you can't track opens, you can't track ad views, which means CPM-based performance metrics will be null and void. Interestingly, Apple is actually making it so that all the email, so it looks like every email gets opened. And this is how they're doing it. So, it sounds great that they're fighting this, but I had to go, Ars Technica, or Forbes doesn't explain this, of course, Tech Republic. This is the best description I found of how they're doing this. Mail privacy protection download. Oh, I need more Earl Grey. Jesus. Mail privacy protection downloads remote content in the background by default. All remote content downloaded by mail, that's the Apple email client, is routed through multiple proxy servers, preventing the sender from learning your IP address. As a result, email senders will only receive generic information rather than information about your behavior. So, right. If I understand this correctly, and you have to go by what I think is happening here, because nobody has written about this as far as I can tell. Couldn't find any. I mean, I read that, I'm like, wait, that's a huge privacy problem. So as far as I understand, Apple is opening every single email that you receive before you even see that email, before you open it yourself, and they will download all the images in that email to one of their servers and then send it to you. So that means that to the advertiser, it looks like all the emails have been opened, right? And they will not get your IP address because it comes from some random Apple server that downloads this image like all 60 million times a minute, right? Or they'll be like, okay, this is the generic Apple server. We can't track this. Question here, because nobody seems to have asked this question. Am I the only one who sees the huge privacy problem with this? Because if this is correct, if this is how Apple does it, then that means they're reading all of your email automatically. Well, automatically, but they're reading all of your email, right? All of those images, they all go through Apple servers, right? So if they open an email for me on a server, they get the image, which means they can scan that image on the fucking server with some algorithm for God knows what. You know, remember what we talked about before. Right? And we're talking a local email client. This is the email client on my phone. This is not Apple webmail. Right? So why is it that Google is under constant fire from privacy people for like reading all your email or analyzing? When I say reading, I mean like algorithms analyzing all the checks in your email and then, serving advertising based on that to you, or learning something about you, and then using that later. But somehow nobody complains, and everybody thinks this is a great privacy thing when this hits their radar, about when they're doing the same thing for a fucking local email client, right? WhatsApp says, maybe they outsourced the reading of all these emails to Google, who likely already had a copy since most people sent to from Gmail. Yeah, well, this time Apple also has a copy. Everybody has the fucking copy of, like, what the fuck? At least you can turn this off. At least for now, you can turn this off. It's not very clearly labeled. It's like, oh, email protection. Do you want to turn the email protection off? Yes, please. I want to turn your fucking protection, in air quote, off, because it's horrible. Like, what the fuck? I mean, okay, I understand. It's unencrypted email. There's not that much of a expectation of privacy. But people fucking bitch about Google doing this, and then it's okay if Apple does this? What the fuck? No, we have 3 good backups: Apple, Google, and the NSA. Says WhatsApp. Yeah. Microsoft probably has a copy as well. It's the modern day offsite backup strategy. I'd like to have my backups encrypted, actually. To me, this seems like Apple's not doing this because they have user privacy at heart, right? they're doing this to get themselves more data about that user, right? And again, as a side effect, they're hurting their competitors because they're not the one making all the money in the advertising industry. That's Google and Facebook, right? So they can fucking stick it to them while they themselves get the information. Like, it would have been, am I dumb? Like, maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I'm an idiot. Please, privatecitizen.press, contact up there, click on it. Many ways to send me information. You can do it completely anonymously if you want. But like, tell me, am I an idiot? Wouldn't it have been like, if you'd been privacy conscious, right? Wouldn't it have been much easier to, if I'm running this mail client on my phone and I want to do the thing Apple does, right? Wouldn't it have been easier to just, I don't know, proxy? I don't know. Can you do that? Am I an idiot? Can you proxy this on the phone? I guess you would have the, like, I mean, no, you can't. Like, if you do it on the phone, if you like, I mean, you could do the opening per default, right? You could open all the emails per default on the phone, but then all the advertisers would have your IP address. But couldn't you just fucking detect the tracking pixel, right? Couldn't you go like, okay, you're opening an email, all the images that are just completely transparent, right? We're not going to fetch these from the server. Or another thing to do that would be like to have, right, you could presume, I mean, okay, presuming that is what they are doing technically. They just fetch an image once, hash it, put it on the server, and then if your phone wants it, opens it on the Apple server. I don't know, just don't fucking do this. I don't see this. Like, the trade-off is, okay, I'm not being tracked by, some advertising companies that send me email. So they now don't know that I opened their email. But now Apple reads all my emails. I mean, you could also just not open the fucking spam mail. Or you could do HTML emails off by default, which is what I do. I have a mail client that just reads plain text. And then if an email looks fishy, like looks weird, I can't read it because it's like a fucking HTML email, then I can opt in and go, right, okay, now I want to see that in HTML. It's not rocket science. And it works because by that first email, I see where it's coming from. Most of the time I can tell if I actually am interested in that and want to maybe opt into like downloading a tracking pixel. Anyway, to me, this just seems like Apple is just looking like they want to be privacy conscious, but in fact they're actually following their own needs, right? Which is not a surprise to me, which brings me to the last part of the show, into basically my conclusion at the end that I want to wrap everything up with. So to me, this is all not very surprising that Apple's doing this. I've said something for at least 10 years now. And I've gotten a lot of flack from Apple fanboys. But I've said this for a long time. Apple is just a company like any other company, right? Companies don't have ethics. They don't have morals. They don't care about you. Companies don't have your best interest at heart. They might say that in PR, press releases. But no, what they do is they do what their leadership thinks is bad for the company, and that's it. And Apple is a company like every other, right? All the stuff about like being privacy focused, whatever, it's propaganda. It's PR. It's designed to make Apple look good. I personally think that the truth is that Apple tried to do online services. They were never good at it. They can't get people to use them. They can't even approach to compete with companies like Google and Facebook when it comes to advertising, and making money on that. So they didn't try, right? They did what is sensible for a company who's figured that out and said, okay, that is not our forte. Our forte is making hardware. And then they spun a nice little PR campaign around that and said, well, we make hardware, we don't sell your data. But I've always said, the moment, right, they can say that, and it might be true right now, but the moment somebody in that company thinks now's the time to collect user data and to get rich of it, they will pivot to that instantly. Like, their fucking PR campaign is worth nothing. And on the other hand, if somebody, let's say the Chinese Communist Party, was to pressure them to compromise on this kind of privacy stuff, then they will do that. Like, if the Chinese Communist Party says, okay, we know you have this privacy thing going in the US, but really, in China, you need to play by our rules. Otherwise, you'll lose the complete Chinese market. Then Apple will do that. And I mean, they've done so in the past. As you know, for example, Signal is not available in the App Store in China anymore, because presumably the Chinese government said, no, Apple, we don't want that. So this is not something I'm making up, right? This is something that actually happens. And to me personally, Terrestrius Jim's already on the intro chat here on the Orville mode enabled. Maybe the next thing they will try to sell us is automated facial recognition of all pictures, of course, only to make sure that no terrorists or child molesters are lurking in the background. Everything for our safety. I think iOS already does that, don't they? I think that it does it locally on the device, but I mean, they already sold us everybody, they already sold everybody universal facial recognition, right? I always thought, okay, with all of this, I still buy Apple devices, right? Because I know that Apple's just another company, and I've had iPhones. I had a lot of Android phones for a period, but I had the first iPhone. And my current iPhone, I think, iPhone 7, I think one of the greatest inventions Apple did with the iPhone, after inventing the actual iPhone, was this home button, where it's not an actual button, but it feels like a button, and it's a fingerprint reader. And you just click on it, and it opens the phone. I think that is genius. It works almost all the time. Right? Okay, you have wet hands, or you went rock climbing or whatever, or you played with super glue, and your fingerprints are kind of messed up. Then it doesn't work. But you have a lot of other fingers, and usually it works. It's the greatest invention ever. I've never understood from a user experience standpoint where they went to, just look at the phone and it unlocks. First of all, doesn't work all the time, right? Had a lot of problems in the beginning with people wearing glasses. So I never had an iPhone with that. So I think it's a bad idea. But then face masks didn't. It didn't work. Face masks. Then geniusly they fixed it. I mean, fuck, you don't need facial recognition for this kind of shit. Yes, it's only on the device, blah, blah, blah. But basically, they're selling universal facial recognition. They've done that for age. I think that's just a bad idea. It's just dumb. It's just one thing where I suspected they were doing that for another motive from the beginning. Call me conspiracy theorist. Lots of people do. Okay, so, but there's a thing which I've personally never really understood. Because for about a decade, there have been a lot of instances, I'm a technology journalist. I write about stuff. I talk to people about this stuff on the radio, on TV, privately. There have been more people than I can remember who I had a discussion with because they said things like, I always buy Apple products because, they said something like, Apple makes money on hardware, not my data, or, with Apple, their hardware is the product, not me and my data, stuff like that. This has included security researchers, privacy advocates, and a surprisingly large number of journalists. Now, for years, whenever people said something like this, I said, to them, I think, not this crassly usually, but usually I made this relatively clear. That is incredibly naive, right? This analysis you just gave me, if you can't even call that an analysis, is based completely on propaganda. It's based solely on what a company said in their press releases. I have told these people for years, Apple's a company like any other company. If the circumstances change and you have no control of these circumstances, they will reverse this decision, which is just a PR slogan in the blink of an eye, and you will probably not even know that. And there's nothing you can do about that. And it's amazed me really how like lots of these people I talked to about this, I had these discussions with, are very smart people. And they're in many cases smarter than me. They're more technically literate than me. And I have never understood how you can be that intelligent and that knowledgeable about technology, but so let me just say it bluntly, so dumb when it just comes to life, right? For me, that is just the fact that all companies are the same and Apple's just a company is just basically universal truth. Like that you don't trust what a company says in a PR statement is, for me, it's just common sense. But there have been so many people who like I said this to, and they're just like either like outright made fun of me or probably made fun of me behind my back or just completely ignored me. And I've said this, I'm on the record a lot about saying this, right? I've said this on at least 3 podcasts I've been involved with, Linux Outlaws, Geek News Radios, CT Uplink. I said this to a lot of people. I've been writing about this in opinion pieces for years, and people generally have belittled me about this or ignored me. And therefore, I'm now really happy that it seems that last week, everybody suddenly woke up to this. And beyond thinking I've been proven right, I just want everybody, I don't care about, that much about being right. It's nice to be right once in a while, when it's basically your job to be right, or to try to be. But I think everybody should just take away from this, just learn from this. Don't forget this. Learn from this. Remember that companies are all the same, right? That companies don't have ethics, they don't have morals, and they don't care about you. They do what they believe is best for them, the company, right? Do not believe their PR, i.e. propaganda. Or, as I try to establish with this podcast, think for yourself, once in a while. And then you will. This is like what I find amazing is that I'm just belaboring this point that I've said this for years because it's always amazed me. It's not fucking rocket science. I can't be the only one who's ever had that idea. Who went like, why should I trust Apple just because they say they're different? But that is not an opinion that has been expressed. Like even in the tech press, like the amount of people. I've been in roundtable discussions with IT security journalists and IT sec experts, and somebody said, Apple use Apple devices because Apple sells the hardware and privacy and blah blah blah, and literally I'm the only one who goes and you just believe them, right? Microsoft says something you don't believe. Why do you believe Apple? Like, where's this coming from? I don't I've never understood why there wasn't more pushback on this kind of thing. I hope there will be now. I hope people have, if anything, they've understood now that this is, this is also why this is not such a big deal for me, because even why I use Apple devices. And while I'm opposed to what they're doing, it's not surprising to me. I use Microsoft products. I'm opposed to stuff they're doing. I'm aware of the fact that companies like Microsoft and Facebook are not my friends when it comes to privacy. I use their products, but I have to think about using them. and I have to think about what I'm doing, and Datensparsamkeit and what I'm uploading and stuff like that. So why would it be different with Apple? I've never understood this. Apple's just sexier than Microsoft and people dig it, says Mozart. Yeah, I understand that. That's why I have an iPhone, because it's a sexier device, right? But that doesn't mean I'd have to trust them. Like, I don't, that leap. I think it's one of the problems. It's like this group camp mentality that we've often spoken about on the podcast as well. Like Team Red, Team Blue. It's the same. Like your Team PlayStation or your Team Xbox, and then once you've bought into that ecosystem, you spend so much money to buy this device, you kind of defend it, right? And even IT security people don't go like, yeah, I know there's problems with this device, but I like it better than the Android, right? They have to have this. They have to build this picture of themselves that they're always like do the IT sec thing, and that's why they bought an iPhone. It's like buying a fancy sports car. You will defend that purchase. Yeah. But like, I own a Moto Guzzi, right? I love that motorbike. I love that company. I love Moto Guzzi. I've loved them ever since like my driving instructor had one. And but that doesn't mean like I've ridden 77,000 kilometers on that bike. But that doesn't mean I don't tell people that there are shit like aspects of owning a Moto Guzzi, right? The fucking transmission falling apart after 60,000 kilometers was it cost me like €2,500 to fix. That's just incredibly shit. That shouldn't happen. Right, having a speedometer where like basically it rains and then the next day it's fogged up from the inside because it's a fucking Italian motorcycle and they didn't design it to withstand rain is shit. I still love that bike, right? But like when somebody asks me, that's a lovely bike, right? Should I buy a Moto Guzzi? I go, it's a lovely bike. Got lots of emotions with it, but I tell them these things. Like, why wouldn't I? I always say, Moto Guzzi's slogan is basically, it's an Italian motorcycle, right? It is pure emotion. And I go, yeah, it is. Like, riding that thing is lovely. It's pure emotion. But when your transmission falls apart after 60,000 kilometers, you fucking hate it. But guess what? Hate is also an emotion. So yeah, it's I know it's I'm probably not the rule. Many people are like this, but I think that's what it comes down to here, which is just I mean at some point it's just human, but still, yeah, I hope from now on when I say things like Apple's just another company, people will like, I get it now. I hope we all like. You probably listen to this and you're like, why are you telling me this, Fab? I feel like you or whatever. But if you don't, contact email, please. But private citizen.press. But still, it's. I hope everybody learned something from it. Also, you might be having this discussion with people, and I'm, one of the reasons I'm doing this is I'm giving you ammunition you can use in that discussion. Anyway, I've talked about the feedback. Let's get into the feedback. We had speaking about discussions, we had an interesting discussion happening in the Matrix room. So let's about the previous episode, episode 80. So let's get into that. Mod 7 says, not everyone is honest about their decisions having downsides and they will buy into the propaganda from the company. I find that problem with people who buy and drive Toyotas. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, could be. I don't have much feelings about Toyotas. I have feelings about Audis. I think pretty much everybody who drives an Audi is a dickhead. So probably lost some listeners right about now, but hey. But yeah, some people are like that. But I've never really, I don't know. Is that like you're suffering because you bought one and then you want to make other people suffer? Is that kind of the rule there? Mozart says, man, I drive an Audi. Just kidding. Actually, I know of at least one listener to the podcast who drives an Audi, possibly two. But I'm not to say that they're probably really nice Audi drivers, but like when I'm out on the road, especially on a motorcycle, I must, at least here in Germany, I feel the dickhead ratio with Audi drivers is a lot higher. And actually, I'm not the only one. I went once. Was this on the Grand Tour? I think Clarkson said this on the Grand Tour. He was like, they were like testing an Audi, and he's like, the problem is that all Audi drivers are dickheads. And then I think Hammond said, isn't that BMW drivers? And then Clarkson was like, no, it used to be BMW like in the 80s and 90s, now it's Audi. And I completely agree with him. It used to be BMW, now it's all the Audi drivers. They are the problem. They're worse than Apple. No, I'm just joking. Usually I find it is people who drive full-size pickups that are not so courteous. That could be a local thing. Downtown Düsseldorf, there's not many people driving full-size. Usually I think they're cool. Like the only, there are few, just digressing here, but I just think this is, I guess, a good discussion. Usually, like in the last few years, there's been an uptick of Dodge, or I think they're not Dodge Rams anymore, right? The huge Ram pickups, or in Australia we call them a ute. And they're usually Harley Davidson enthusiasts because they always have a Harley Davidson sticker on the back. So I think they're buying the Rams because Harleys are notorious for breaking down. I don't think they're that bad anymore these days either. Like Goodsey's were notorious for breaking down as well. I have to say this Goodsey is very reliable aside from like the transmission crapping out. But like they're no screws flying off and shit like that. Like back in the day. But like, to keep the joke going, they're all like old fat boy owners, and they need like a vehicle that they just can, like when they break down, they just phone the wife, and the wife takes the Dodge Ram down, and they just put the Harley in the back and then drive home. That's what I picture whenever I see like a Ram with a Harley sticker. Courteous. I think I spelled that wrong. No, I think you spelled that correctly. Anyway, I was talking about the feedback. So in our Matrix room, we had a little discussion. So Yevgeny Kuznetsov says about episode 80. Okay, I'm gonna read this all out with like the replies from another listener and then the reply to the reply from Yevgeny, and I'm gonna try to hold back, and then I'm gonna say what I think about this. So Yevgeny says, funny how you first mentioned in the episode proper that one of the issues with the internet is that country borders and jurisdictions don't necessarily apply. And then in the feedback part, explain how YouTube violated your rights as a German journalist and should be held liable by the German law. As much as I sympathize with your case in this particular situation, I can't help thinking that I'm actually extremely glad YouTube doesn't always exactly follow the Russian regulations, the Chinese regulations, the Turkish regulations, etc. For me living in Russia, the fact that YouTube tends to ignore a big part of Russian authorities' demands, however perfectly legal those might be here in Moscow, is definitely a welcome thing. That comes at the cost of YouTube not giving a flying fuck about German regulations either, I guess. I mean, in Russia, saying that same-sex marriage relationships are not entirely bad is usually considered by the courts to be, quote, gay propaganda, end quote, which is actually illegal and punished by law. Some goes for the recreational drug use, euthanasia, anti-clericalism, etc., etc. Not even mentioning critics of the powers that be. By the Russian law, YouTube should be banning all of that. I'm glad it doesn't. By the Russian law, YouTube is absolutely not allowed to ban Russian officials, especially when they say things like, quote, gay people should get mental treatment or be executed on site, end quote. Yet that's exactly what YouTube does. I'd rather they did, because I think the stupidity and morality of our public persons should be visible to anyone who cares to watch. But I see how it can be viewed as beneficial too. So then you say YouTube should do this and that and shouldn't do that or the other because Grundgesetz. My gut reaction is, fuck no. Abiding by the local regulations is not a good idea. No, no, no. To which Georges, another producer of the podcast, replied, interesting point of view. In Russia's case, though, I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube's policy is on purpose more liberal in your country, as it helps maintain the narrative of the US government that everything ruled by your president must be evil. So maybe they're just trying to influence the Russian people with YouTube's woke content instead of being just as authoritarian as your government. To which Yevgeny then replied, could well be. In fact, that's what our authorities constantly say. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. actively promote pro-American and anti-Russian, well, anti-Putin, but Putin equals Russia, and there can be no Russia without Putin, or so our head of the parliament says, narrative. I find that entirely possible. In China's and Russia's cases, as opposed to Germany, admittedly, there are local alternatives. We have RooTube. They actually didn't know that. We have RooTube. On RooTube, we listen to hard bass the whole time, yeah.
Goddamn Ruskies!
I have to check out RooTube. It's gonna be hilarious. We have RooTube for videos and VK for Facebook. Those suck. That's VKontakte. Those suck, and very few people voluntarily use them. But hey, it's entirely possible for the Russian authorities to actively ban YouTube, Facebook, etc. Same ways the Chinese did years ago. Russia has successfully banned LinkedIn several years ago, so there's an example. Who needs Google when there's Yandex that doesn't sell your data, only gives it to the FSB for free? The problem is, this enforcement of the local jurisdiction does not, in my opinion, benefit end users in a way thinkable, nor does it benefit the internet as a whole or humankind as a species. Now, Yevgeny, I appreciate that you wrote in, and of course I always welcome feedback, even if it's, well, especially if it's critical of the show. I think these are valid points, I would say, from your point of view. From your point of view in Russia, I completely understand them. I do think you, I don't want to say made a mistake, because it's not so much a mistake, but in my analysis, what you are basically doing is you're saying, let me put this bluntly, the Russian laws are shit, so I'm happy Facebook doesn't enforce them, right? And from your point of view, that is completely understandable, but you know, from a point of view of somebody who lives in a country where I think the laws are much more reasonable and in fact are important, you know, like our constitution's protections of journalists and what they have to say, I think, yes, they should be enforced. I mean, of course, I think you misunderstood me, because you say, you first mentioned the episode proper that one of the issues with the internet is that country borders and jurisdictions don't necessarily apply. I was there talking about, you know, cross-border hacker attacks, you know, what people call cyber war. I don't think jurisdictions don't apply, right? There have been successful cases where, you know, criminals like carders and ransomware people have attacked businesses and people in Europe, in Germany, for example, and the German police has been able to reach across borders and, you know, get, you know, for example, the Ukraine's police and government's help and arrest people in the country and actually get them extradited, or, you know, have them prosecuted there. Yes, of course, that doesn't really work so much with Russia, but, you know, that's, I don't think jurisdictions don't apply. And I think they should apply. I think if you think the local Russian laws are shit, then the answer shouldn't be no internet company should enforce local laws. The answer should be you need to do something to fix your laws. I understand that is hard and that you can't do that as a person. And I'm just saying I think, from my point of view, your perspective on this is wrong. you have shitty laws, and you basically probably came to the conclusion that there's no way you can change them, and you don't move from your country, which I can completely understand, and I don't want you to. But like, you then draw the conclusion that because of that, companies shouldn't enforce the laws they operate in. Yes, if Facebook, I don't care if they're a US company, they make money in Germany. They make money from German companies who give them money for advertising that they serve to Germans. And that means they should comply with German laws. Now, I'm not saying anything like, we can't, in Germany, we can't just ban Facebook. And I'm glad we can't, right? We haven't not build a huge firewall around the country. We have not taken steps like the Russian government has to isolate, internet connection, crossover points into the country in such a way that presumably they could switch the internet off, or they could filter it, and they could, just block requests to a company's servers. We can't do that in Germany. And I'm happy I don't want, when I'm saying I want the government to enforce that our laws are being upheld in the internet or in cyberspace, to take, Biden vocabulary. I don't mean let's block these companies. I'm saying, they can be sued, right? They can be sued by the German government. They can be sued by, and they have been sued by individuals, Max Schrems, they have operations within the EU, right? We can reach them. We could presumably, like, if we really wanted to hurt them, we could make it illegal for German companies to advertise on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's something that or within the EU, right? I mean, that's a pretty drastic step, but like, I think this constitutional protection is very important. That's not because I'm a journalist, and it's my job. That's in the interest of everybody in Germany, because what that right guarantees is free reporting on things, and the ability to get that reporting out and to use a large public platform, which YouTube essentially is, even though it's run by a company, to do so. I think that is very important, right? And I think we can't just compromise on that because the local laws in China or in Russia are crap. I mean, I'm somebody who's a very global person. I rejoice that I have listeners in Russia and even listeners in China, everywhere around the world. I enjoy that. I like that people give me local feedback, but that doesn't mean I want, I can't do anything about your laws being shit. I don't want that to influence how Facebook is acting in Germany. Even if we can just make it in Germany better, it's better for some, right? It's not better for you guys in Russia or people in China, but it's better for some. And you guys need to have other ways to fucking tell your government that you don't want this shit. I know that is like really hard. I mean, somebody who would like to tell his government that he thinks like all those COVID restrictions are idiotic and should be stopped immediately, which I can't, because the democracy is just not set up in a way, and certain parts of the public and of the establishment and of the media are just completely against that, and so you can't voice that opinion without being immediately sidelined. So I know how that is. I know that it must be the same way and much worse if you're trying to fight Putin in Russia, right? But still, also I think it's incredibly unfair that YouTube, because they're an American company, and I think nobody has argued that they shouldn't be enforcing US law. Like, the alternative would be that they're just enforcing US law all over the world. And like, the alternative would be, okay, we don't care about jurisdictions where users come from. We just care about the country we're in. Right? And then you're enforcing US laws everywhere. I mean, that in itself is not my idea of justice, but also it will lead to to basically the version of offshore banking where you have some little state where they basically have no enforcement over digital stuff, and then every company is just headquartered in Trinidad and Tobago, and they can do whatever they want, and Bob's your uncle. I don't want that. I've never been there's always been this discussion the internet is a wild west and, it should be free. I'm an advocate of freedom, but not to the extent of I'm never a purist or a fanatic in any sense, right? I'm not a freedom fanatic. I understand that there need to be rules. And that there need to be certain things that need to be enforced. And I actually think that enforcing some laws is better for everybody's freedom. And for example, in this very instance, I think if you force YouTube to have a certain degree of neutrality and not go arbitrarily because that's their politics, or we don't like this topic and we don't like that topic, that is better for humanity, right? It's better for all of us. And I'm just happy that we have apparently, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. It's not like I'm complaining, that I am complaining, but that they took my video off YouTube. But the larger point was that it's actually against the laws here. And as I said last episode, it seems like courts they tend to agree with that. Like at least that court in Cologne clearly said so. So I just said that I just think that's important because I think that law is important. But enough just shouting at poor Yevgeny here. I would once again like to say that I'm incredibly happy that you provided feedback and your standpoint and allowed me to discuss this further. And I'm not doing this to rag on you, but I think it's actually a very interesting discussion. Because I thought when you said that, when you said, okay, first you say this and then you say that in the feedback section, I resolved to put that in the show and to talk about it because I think that other people might have come to the same conclusion, right? They might have listened to the show and come to the same conclusion as you and said, well, this doesn't really make any sense. He doesn't want to be they're cross-border and no really local jurisdiction, and then now he wants to enforce the Grundgesetz. So I also think, that's a valid point bringing that up, and I wanted to make my thoughts clear on that, and I hope I at least, I don't know, succeeded a little bit. So thanks again for writing in, Yevgeny, and also, Georges, who, basically made this a discussion in our Matrix room. I enjoyed that a lot. And Mode 7 seems to agree and says, yes, it is great hearing his viewpoint, meaning Yevgeny. And Jonathan is also there and says, yes, a very patriotic act. Yeah, the Patriot Act, for example, is a very American law that I don't want enforced in my jurisdiction because it's not something I agree with, and I think most Germans wouldn't agree with. So we don't want that here. Keep that in your patriotic country or whatever. Yes, so something I have to mention now. This podcast is brought to you by you, people like you. Since, as I pointed out in the beginning, I'm not being paid by the NSO group not to report on Pegasus. That means you will get a Pegasus show at some point, hopefully. Pat Riot Act, as RMS calls it. Oh my god, that's such an RMS. Oh my god, shitty puns. That is so RMS. So cringe. Anyway, yes. So the people that make this possible are the people like you. You are listening. You can become a producer by sending me information, by sending me feedback, by explaining the situation in your country, by shouting at me and saying you're wrong. Apple is actually the best company in the world, and they're different. They're all transcendent beings working there. Whatever. That makes you a producer, and I appreciate that. That's what the value for value model is. You're all not listeners, you're potentially also producers. But that also has the flip side that you're responsible for kind of keeping the show on the air. So if you want that, you can think about maybe, I don't know, I'm receiving this for free. Maybe it has some value. If you think it has, please go to the show notes, privatecitizen.press. There are many ways you can help out. You can pitch in, you can become a patron on Patreon, or you can, use PayPal and contribute via producers@fab.industries. That's the email address, producers@fab.industries. Or you could become a Twitch subscriber. I mean, you can watch the show when I record it live on Twitch anyway. You can be in chat, you can hang out. But if you're a subscriber, you're also helping out the show. And this is the point where I think everybody's done that. So first of all the people who pitched in via Patreon and PayPal, those people are Georges, who was active in that discussion earlier. Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Heathy, who's in Twitch chat, Michael Malm Jensen, Dave 1i11g, Michael Small, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, Vlad, Jaroslav Lichtblau, IKN, Kai Sears, Bennett Piata, Fadi Mansour, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, Tobias, Mode 7, is also in Twitch chat, David Potter, Sandman616, Mika, Martin, Rodane the Insane, Rizal, Avis, Mr. Amish, Dave Umrish, Drive Zero, Ricky M, Barry Williams, Jonathan Edwards, Cam, Philip, Captain Eckert, RJ Tracy, D, Rick Bragg, Robert Forster, Super User, and No Reply. And the people who have subscribed on Twitch and helped out the show in this way are Mike the Dane, Flash Gordo, Sandman616, Mod 7's Unavailable, Epochsky, El Terrestris Jim, is also in Twitch chat right now, Redeemer F, Galtaran, Bacon the Pork, and Jonathan MH_com. Thanks to all of you. And also thanks to Bytemark, who are a UK hosting company. They're providing the servers that I host the audio files on and the bandwidth. And I couldn't do the show without them, because if I paid for that, I'd be broke. So thanks to Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. And that's it for now, for today, for this show. I'll be back next week. If I don't have any vaccine side effects and I can manage, I might try to get another show out on Wednesday. But that's not a promise at this point. Let's leave it at that, and we'll see. I would like to credit Raoul Kabazali, who came up with the wrote and recorded the theme song of this podcast called Acoustic Roots. And then I'm going to play you out with a song from Velvet Head featuring Easton. That's called Why Don't We Feel It? And let's hope that's going to be the theme tune to my vaccination. And I won't feel anything. Until then, I don't know, try to think for yourself once in a while, and then you'll be 10 years ahead of the curve and all the IT security professionals. How about that? See you soon. Have a good one.
Sadness I can't shake. A void, it was burning. it's so hard to let love unfold and stay. Humming the same song, never writing the words, and our wheels they keep on turning. Why don't we feel it embracing us? There was a time when magic opened up our eyes. Why don't we feel it embracing us? There was a time when magic opened up our eyes.
Well, that's another show on the can. Nice. I will now go edit this motherfucker. As you can see, Jonathan's online. Friend Jonathan. In the chat a minute ago, now streaming Tarkov. So we're gonna raid him, of course. And keep an eye on fab.industry/stream. I'll put up if I can get another show going on Wednesday. I'll put it up ahead of time. Until then, we'll see when I can get back to streaming. All depends on how I react to this vaccine. I'm gonna be completely genetically modified. After this, I'm gonna have DNA and RNA, so I'm gonna be gene modified as hell. I plan to laugh at any, like, this food doesn't contain genetically engineered material. I'm gonna laugh at that. I'm gonna say, yeah, you don't, but I do, motherfucker. Anyway, have a good one. See you soon. Let's head over to Jonathan. He's always fun, and a lot better at Tarkov than me. So let's watch him for a while I'll edit that show and you do whatever you do. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it a lot. See you soon.